The stars had been silent for almost an hour. Captain Thorne sat alone on the bridge of the Devastator, staring through reinforced glass at the twisted beauty of deep space. The ship was barely holding together, its hull torn by ion cannons, plasma scorch marks charred across its titanium bones. The once mighty battleship now drifted like a bleeding animal, wounded but not dead. A soft warning light blinked to life on the main console. Incoming signatures. Dozens. He didn't flinch. "Let them come," Thorne muttered. He was tired. His beard was unkempt, skin darkened by days of radiation exposure after life support started giving out. His crew was gone. Not dead. Slaughtered. Executed like animals after surrendering aboard the transport vessel they'd sent to negotiate. The Ezerathi didn't take prisoners. At least not human ones. They called it justice. He called it what it was. Genocide. Thorne leaned forward, ignoring the sharp pain in his side. 3 fractured ribs, maybe 4. Didn't matter. He was the last man standing on this ship, and he'd promised them, his crew, his brothers in arms, that their deaths wouldn't be for nothing. The comms crackled. "Unidentified human vessel," a voice rasped in that smug, nasal Ezerathi dialect. "You are surrounded. Surrender your craft. Eject all weapon systems. You will be vaporized quickly." He didn't answer. Instead, he keyed in the sequence manually, a fail-safe code no AI could override. He bypassed fleet command protocols, locked in a final payload route, and rechecked the coordinates one last time. "Captain's log," he whispered into the recorder. "Thorne, Nile, last survivor of the Devastator. Ship compromised. Crew executed by Ezerathi High Command. Mission failed, but not forgotten." He paused. A single tear crept down the side of his dirt-smeared face. "If you're hearing this, and you're human, tell Earth. Tell them what they did. Show them the bodies. Show them the burn marks on our insignia. We begged for peace, and they gave us fire." He pressed send. The transmission bounced to 3 different relay beacons. It would take weeks to get back to Earth. But it would get there. He made sure of that. Outside, the fleet formed like a noose. 50 warships surrounding his crippled vessel. They were flaunting it now. Too confident. These aliens never understood human desperation, or what a cornered man was truly capable of. Thorne opened a steel panel beneath the captain's chair. Inside was a black cube with blinking red light, nuclear-laced antimatter cores wired into the reactor's pulse line. Illegal. Banned under every treaty signed between Earth and the Galactic Accord. Didn't matter anymore. The Ezerathi thought they were gods, the superior race. Tall, thin, biologically perfect. But they didn't have the human soul. They didn't have rage. Thorne smiled. Not the smile of a man giving up. The smile of a man who knew the tide would turn. As he entered the activation codes, a final message blared across the comms. "Human Captain, this is your last chance to surrender. You cannot win." He keyed the mic. "I'm not here to win," he said coldly. "I'm here to make you remember." The reactor went critical. The Devastator exploded in a silent bloom of blue and white flame, the antimatter chain reaction consuming every Ezerathi ship within 20,000 clicks. A third of their northern fleet vaporized in seconds. And that wasn't even the real retribution. Because back on Earth, they'd just received his transmission. And humanity wasn't going to forgive this. The footage was unfiltered. Admiral Rayner watched it in silence inside the war room buried beneath the New Berlin Defense Complex. Around him sat military brass, intel analysts, and government traitors who'd once advocated diplomacy with the Ezerathi. None of them spoke. None dared to. On-screen, Captain Thorne's final moments played out again. The last message, the pain in his eyes, the unshaken voice declaring vengeance, then the blast, that magnificent, horrifying eruption as the Devastator tore itself and the surrounding Ezerathi fleet into blue-white oblivion. The lights flickered. "That wasn't suicide," Raynor said flatly. "That was a message." Across the room, the Terran Defense Minister cleared his throat. He looked pale, weak. "Thorne went rogue. That explosion, he violated interstellar law, that antimatter cascade." "Saved your ass," Raynor snapped, standing. He was a tall, broad-chested man in his late 50s, eyes like cold steel and a scar running from his temple to his jaw. "Don't sit there quoting treaty violations while our people are being executed like dogs." He turned to the screen again. There, paused, was the face of Thorne. Blood on his forehead, a tear cutting through grime, fire in his eyes. "I knew him," Raynor said. "Trained him myself. He wasn't the kind to go out easy." The minister swallowed hard. "Then what are you suggesting?" The room fell quiet. "I'm saying it's time we stopped pretending we're still part of a galaxy that respects us," Raynor growled. "It's time to make them fear the word human again." No one moved. Not yet. Not until one of the black uniformed intelligence officers finally spoke. "We traced the broadcast path," she said. 3 relay points, all independent, and encrypted at a level we've only seen used by the old Black Sun Initiative. Several people shifted uncomfortably. The Black Sun program was a shadow in military history, a classified unit of unregulated operatives banned after the Mars massacres. The public didn't even believe it existed. "Are you saying Thorne had Black Sun tech?" Raynor asked. "Worse," the agent replied. "He had access codes to dead relay satellites, codes no one's used since the Jupiter incursions." That made Raynor pause. "So someone gave him those codes," he said slowly. "Someone who wanted that message to get through?" The Admiral folded his arms, staring back at Thorne's frozen image. "God damn it, Nile. What did you get yourself into?" Halfway across the galaxy, on the scorched world of Krios Delta, a man named Slade Darren sat in a rusted bunker, cleaning the barrel of a forbidden ion rifle. He watched the transmission like everyone else. But unlike the politicians and generals, he didn't weep or get angry. He smiled. They told him humanity had gone soft. That peace was the future. That war was a thing of the past. He'd never believed it. Thorne's death changed everything. Not because it was noble, not even because it was brave, but because it reminded the galaxy of something they'd forgotten. Humans fight best when they're alone. Slade stood, muscles coiled with years of battlefield training. He wasn't part of any fleet, not anymore. Discharged, disowned, disgraced even, accused of war crimes he'd never committed, left to rot on a dying planet. But now, he had purpose again. A message pinged his ancient communication device. It was a name, one he hadn't heard in years. Raynor. Underneath it, a location, a meeting point in deep space. Slade loaded the rifle. "It's about damn time." The Ezerathi were confused at first. 3 systems went dark within a week of the Devastator explosion. Their patrols went missing. Freighters started vanishing. Communication relays blinked out, one by one. And the worst part? No bodies. No wreckage. Just silence. Until a new transmission arrived on all frequencies. A voice. Low, human, and merciless. "You slaughtered them while their hands were raised. You burned flags of peace and killed unarmed men. You sent an armada for a single ship. Now, we send ghosts." No one claimed it. No known fleet responded. The Earth government denied involvement, but military analysts picked up a pattern. The attacks were precise, surgical. Whoever was striking, they knew Ezerathi protocol, their movements, their codes. And the death toll kept rising. Admiral Rayner stood aboard the Iron Rain, the flagship of the Terran Black Response Initiative, a ghost fleet long thought dismantled. Its halls were dark. Men here didn't wear insignias. They carried scars instead. He met Slade in the command bay, flanked by other names spoken only in whispers. Marlowe, Drix, Carver. Every man in that room had once been discarded by Earth's bureaucracy. Now they were its last line. Rayner didn't bother with greetings. "You saw the message?" "I did." "You ready to return the favor?" Slade stepped forward. "I didn't come here to talk." Rayner nodded slowly. "We're not sending armies. We're not launching fleets. We're going to hit them where it hurts. One target at a time." He tapped the console. A series of red dots appeared. Ezerathi command centers, slave stations, biolabs where human prisoners had been dissected. "We're going to remind the galaxy," Rayner said, his voice like iron. "What happens when you corner a species that crawled out of its own extinction?" Slade smirked. "Let's make Thorn proud." It started with the raid on Baraxis 9, an unarmed biostation guarded only by drone patrols and a skeleton crew. The Ezerathi believed it safe. Untouchable. They were wrong. Slade led the assault team in silence. Just 7 men in camo armor, using old Black Sun tech. They didn't blast their way in. They walked through the walls using quantum phase charges, took out the guards in under 60 seconds. No noise. No mercy. Inside, they found humans, dozens of them, stripped, wired into machines, organs harvested while they still breathed. The footage from the raid was never aired on public Earth networks. It was too much. But the Ezerathi received it, in full. Attached was a message written in blood on the walls of the lab. "We are not diplomats. We are not negotiators. We are the reckoning." After that, everything spiraled. Black Response hit a weapons factory next, took the plans for the new Helix-class ship, and wiped their AI clean. Then they hacked a luxury cruise liner carrying Ezerathi nobility, forced it into orbit around a dead star and left it spinning in gravitational torture. The galaxy finally started to listen. Fear set in, and for the first time in 50 years, the High Consulate called an emergency war council. "Who are they?" the consul screamed. "Where are they getting this tech?" No one answered, because the real fear wasn't in the attacks. It was that Earth never claimed them. There was no official war, no declarations, just whispers of the dead, burning messages into the void. The Ezerathi tried retaliation, sent a fleet to probe Earth's defenses. It didn't come back. Rayner knew this couldn't last forever. Earth's official government was panicking, trying to cover the tracks, pretend the retaliation wasn't sanctioned. Public news outlets ran carefully worded denials. But behind closed doors, support grew. Donations, intel leaks, disgraced officers slipping coordinates through the dark net, exiled engineers returning to build machines that weren't supposed to exist anymore. Even civilians started disappearing into the black, signing up for the Ghost War. Humanity had been humiliated for too long, mocked by the taller, longer-lived races, treated like backwater animals in a civilized galaxy. Now they were making their name known again, one kill at a time. Rayner stood at the bridge window as they prepared to jump to another target. He thought of Thorn, of the crew of the Devastator, and of the thousands who never even got to speak before they were burned. "You wanted peace," he muttered under his breath, "but you forgot who we were before peace." He turned to Slade. "Ready?" Slade nodded, loading a fresh charge into his rifle. "Always." The Ezerathi didn't sleep. Their species had evolved beyond the need. But now, for the first time in 1,000 years, they wished they could shut off their minds. Because sleep was where the humans waited. They came like phantoms. 1 minute a science outpost existed. The next, it was stripped clean. No survivors, no signals, not even heat signatures. Just scorched metal and a symbol spray-painted in Terran red. A skull impaled on a lightning bolt. The symbol of the forgotten. The Black Response Initiative. The High Consulate convened beneath the twin spires of Verax Prime, deep in the heart of Ezerathi territory. They were ancient, arrogant, and cloaked in their long white robes stitched with authority no one dared question. Until now. The floor of the Grand Chamber was slick with tension. Their generals stood by, nervous, exchanging glances. Something unspoken was hanging over them. A shift. A reversal. "This isn't war!" Supreme Consul Eteros hissed, his gray tongue flicking out in frustration. "This is chaos! These humans are feral!" "They're organized," one of the generals corrected. "Too coordinated, too surgical. They know our blind spots." Eteros's eyes narrowed. "Then how are they not part of Earth's government?" "Because Earth doesn't claim them, and that's the most terrifying part." They watched in silence as yet another attack report flashed across the hologram. Mining Colony 874-Delta annihilated. Dirt Yuz Ölu. Gas reserves stolen. Bioresearch Hub. Z7 overrun. Staff crucified. Data extracted. Diplomatic envoy ship Doria ambushed, left drifting in space with the crew's eyes gouged out and pinned to the walls. The room was silent for a long time. Etaros finally spoke. "They're sending a message." "No," someone whispered. "They've become the message." On the Iron Rain, Admiral Raynor leaned over the battle table, observing intercepted transmissions from Ezerathi High Command. He wasn't smiling. He hadn't smiled since Thorn's last message. But something cold inside him felt satisfied. "They're cracking," said Drix, a former assassin turned infiltration specialist. "2 planets pulled back their outer garrisons. Afraid we'll strike next." "They should be," Slade replied, loading his pistol. Slade had become the tip of the spear, the blunt force behind the message. No speech, no tactics, just pure violence. If Raynor was the mind of the movement, Slade was its hammer. "We hit Helion 3 next," Raynor said, gesturing towards the screen. "Slave colony, all human. Ezerathi run it under the radar, pretend it's a mining contract. In reality, it's organ trade, flesh auctions." "How many guards?" Slade asked. "Too many," Raynor answered. "You'll need a full team." "Don't care, I'm going." There was something broken in Slade, the kind of broken that didn't heal, just redirected. He'd seen his brother gutted on a backworld battlefield by Ezerathi mercs who laughed while they did it. That day, Slade changed. And now the galaxy would pay for what they did. The raid on Helion 3 wasn't stealth. It wasn't subtle. It was slaughter. Slade dropped into the atmosphere like a meteor, his exosuit turning him into a walking tank. Behind him, 6 others, each one trained for this kind of warfare. No one spoke. When they breached the main gates, alarms screamed across the colony. Slade opened fire with a rail cannon built from outlawed tech. Every shot tore through walls, bodies, bone. The Ezerathi guards fired back, disorganized, panicked. He didn't stop moving. Inside the compound, they found cages, children, women, old men with IVs in their arms and organs missing from their bodies. Slade saw a little boy, no older than 10, holding his own intestines, barely alive. His eyes were human. They were begging. Slade's rage went nuclear. He didn't kill the last 2 Ezerathi guards with bullets. He ripped their hearts out. The slaves were evacuated. Every inch of the compound was torched, and on the tallest spire of the colony, Slade carved a message into the metal with a plasma blade. "We remember Helion. This is not the end. This is only the start." Back on Earth, the media tried to cover it, tried to make it neat, political, digestible for public consumption. But the truth bled out. Whistleblowers leaked footage from Helion 3. People saw the blood, the missing organs, the auctions where human women were sold to Ezerathi nobles as breeding stock. Something snapped. Riots erupted in 5 cities. Crowds chanted Thorne's name. Protesters held signs with the skull and bolt symbol. The government scrambled to keep order, but the people had chosen. The mask of peace shattered. They wanted retribution. And the black response gave it to them. Eteros called for vengeance. He deployed the Silence Fleet, a legendary Ezerathi task force trained to operate without communication, without warning, in total synchronization. They were undefeated, until they reached the planet of Verdanos. That's where Raynor was waiting. With just one ship, the Iron Rain, the Ezerathi expected cowardice, they expected retreat. Instead, they got baited. Raynor activated a gravity rift bomb, an experimental device Earth had banned after a test nearly swallowed one of Jupiter's moons. He lured them in and detonated it. 3 ships were torn in half instantly. 2 more spun out of control, crashing into each other. The last was disabled, spinning helplessly as Raynor boarded it with a kill team. He didn't kill them all. He left one, tied up, scorched, missing an eye, sent back to Eteros with a message carved into his chest. "This is for Thorne." Slade began changing. He spoke less, slept even less. The war was becoming something deeper for him, more personal. His entire purpose was now violence, his entire soul, fused to vengeance, and Raynor noticed. "You need to pull back," he told him one night. "I'm not done," Slade said coldly. "You're losing yourself." Slade looked at him then, eyes hollow but bright with fury. "I lost myself the moment they cut my brother open while he begged for help. Everything since has been a bonus." He walked away. Raynor didn't stop him. Some wars didn't want heroes. They wanted monsters. Etaros panicked. He summoned assassins. He hired mercenaries from the dark sectors. He offered 1 billion credits for the head of the man called Slade. None returned. Eventually, the truth set in. The humans weren't just retaliating. They were enjoying it. They were fighting like a people who'd remembered something they'd buried for too long. Their nature, their roots, their teeth. And it terrified the Ezerathi. Their soldiers refused to patrol outer systems. Colonists began fleeing toward safer inner sectors. The illusion of superiority cracked. Because the humans had shown them the one truth no civilization, no matter how ancient, could ignore. Pain is the universal language, and the humans were fluent. Raynor called for one final strike, not on a base, not on a ship, but on Eteros himself. The admiral stood before his remaining lieutenants, men like Slade, Drix, and Carver, each one blooded, hardened, changed by what they'd seen. "We don't stop this war by sending messages," he said. "We end it by cutting off the head." Slade nodded. "Permission to deliver the blade." Eteros never saw it coming. Slade infiltrated his palace during the Day of Ascension, a religious celebration meant to honor Ezerathi supremacy. Slade didn't just kill the guards. He humiliated them. He walked through the halls wearing a shredded Ezerathi flag as a cape, dropping it in front of Etaros's throne. Eteros trembled. "You can't. This is sacred ground." Slade didn't speak. He raised the plasma blade and did what needed to be done. Eteros died screaming. On his body, Slade left a note. "This is what you get for touching our kind." The palace burned. The consulate collapsed. The Ezerathi Empire began to fracture. And Earth? Earth didn't celebrate. They didn't hold parades. They just stood up straighter, walked with heads high again. Because no matter what the rest of the galaxy believed, one thing was now undeniable. Humanity was back. And this time, they weren't coming in peace. The galaxy held its breath. Eteros was dead. His palace, once the symbol of Ezerathi dominance, now lay in ruins, stained with blood and ash. His head, severed and wrapped in Terran battlecloth, had been broadcast across a dozen systems by a hijacked Ezerathi beacon. The message wasn't political. It wasn't diplomatic. It was primal. "You started this. We're going to finish it." Civil unrest gripped the Ezerathi worlds like a fever. Planets once loyal to the throne began to waver. Minor species under their control, beaten down, silenced for centuries, started rising up. Rebellions erupted on Uknar, then Velen, then Riska Prime. They weren't human-led, but they were human-inspired. All it took was the sight of one Terran skull and bolt flag fluttering in the wind of a colony square, and the screams of a forgotten people turned to war cries. The Ezerathi Empire had cracked. Now it was breaking, and Slade was still moving. "Stop pretending this isn't suicide," Raynor growled, slamming a fist on the console. "Eteros is gone. The Ezerathi structure is in free fall. You did what you set out to do. It's time to pull back." Slade didn't flinch. "I don't remember giving a damn about structure," he said. "I remember cages. I remember kids with no kidneys. I remember your government turning a blind eye for 30 years while they ate us alive from the edges. We've made our point. We haven't made them bleed yet." Slade stood, fully armored, rifle slung across his back, knife strapped to his chest. His armor was scorched, scratched, patched with enemy insignias torn from the uniforms of the ones he'd butchered. He didn't look like a soldier anymore. He looked like death on two legs. "I'm not pulling back, Admiral," Slade said, voice low. "You want a hero? You'll find none left. You want vengeance? Then get out of my way." Raynor didn't stop him. He just turned and muttered, "You're not coming back from this." Slade's voice echoed behind him. "I already didn't." He went dark for 2 weeks. No communications, no updates, no trace. Black Response operatives whispered that he was hitting unlisted targets, pirate lords who trafficked Terran children, smuggler dens that traded in human DNA, black market cybervats full of half-grown clones harvested from Earth's slums. He left trails of fire and gutted bodies wherever he went. No survivors, no mercy. Some began calling him the Phantom of Retribution. Others called him the Devil in Iron. But one thing they all agreed on: Slade wasn't hunting the Ezerathi anymore. He was punishing everyone who let this happen. Raynor watched the reports come in. The list of names grew longer each day. Human traffickers, corrupt Earth officials, corporate rats who made fortunes on secret deals with alien syndicates. They were vanishing, one by one, killed in their sleep, torched in their ships, found with their tongues ripped out and Terran justice burned into their skin. Slade had gone rogue, and the people loved it. They wore black cloths with the skull and bolt stitched in red. They tagged his symbol onto buildings, walls, vehicles. They printed his face, half-shadowed, blood-streaked, onto flags and marched with it. He wasn't a man anymore. He was a movement. And movements don't negotiate. They destroy. In the capital city of Arkin 5, nestled deep in one of the remaining Ezerathi strongholds, a warlord named Sirek Tharn gathered what was left of the old guard. He was younger than Eteros, sharper and less inclined toward speeches. He believed in force. "Let me make this clear," he growled at the round table of governors and generals. "We are not losing to human strategy. We are losing to human fury. This Slade is not operating under any chain of command. He's not bound by law or morality. He is the embodiment of everything we feared humans could become." One governor, a thin, pale creature with sapphire eyes, spoke nervously. "What do you propose, then?" Sirek leaned forward. "We bait him." "How?" Sirek activated a holomap. A small rural planet blinked red in the outer systems. Not heavily guarded, not important on any tactical level, but it had one thing. Slade's sister. She's lived in obscurity for years, never involved in Earth's military. No records in the galaxy's databases until 2 days ago when one of our tracking spiders picked up her DNA on a refugee manifest. The room went cold. "You want to capture her?" the governor asked. "Use her as leverage?" "No," Sirek replied. "We don't negotiate with monsters." He paused. "We kill her, slowly, publicly, make the whole galaxy watch." He smiled. "And we see if even the devil can feel pain." The attack was surgical. 3 cloaked dropships landed on the outskirts of Yalara, the quiet settlement where Ella Darren had lived since the war began. She was a botanist, quiet, private, hated everything about the interstellar conflict. She hadn't seen Slade in years. Didn't even know where he was. When the soldiers came, she didn't beg. She tried to run. They shot her in the leg, dragged her out by her hair, and turned on the cameras. Sirek made sure the broadcast was intercepted by every black response frequency. And he waited. Slade was on a dead rock called Voss, shoving a blade into a smuggler's throat when the footage hit his wristcom. He froze, blood still dripping down his arm. The image showed Ella tied to a steel post, her eyes swollen, lip split, her voice shaking as she spoke her name. "This is for the sins of your brother," a voice said off-screen. And then the screaming started. Slade didn't blink, didn't breathe. He simply stood, every muscle frozen, locked in place as her cries filled his ears. He whispered something under his breath. No one heard it. But when he looked up, the air around him seemed to thicken. He didn't scream. He just moved. He reached Yalara in less than 30 hours. No backup, no support, just fury. The Ezerathi had been waiting. They laid traps, gunships, mines. Sirek had prepared for a siege. What he got instead was an extinction-level event. Slade dropped in from orbit, blasting through a gunship with a heat lance and landing in a crater of flame. The first Ezerathi squad didn't even raise their weapons before he tore them in half. He moved like a ghost, his armor modified to deflect ion and plasma. Every strike was death. He didn't shoot to wound, he shot to erase. By the time he reached the compound, the field was covered in bodies. Dozens, then hundreds. He walked through the main gate and saw her. Ella's body, lifeless, suspended from a steel beam, and next to her, laughing, was Sirek Tharn. "Ah," the warlord grinned. "The Phantom arrives." Slade dropped his gun. He didn't need it. He pulled the blade from his chest sheath. Old Earth steel, crude by galactic standards, but personal. Sirek pulled his own twin plasma swords. "What now, Butcher?" he sneered. Slade's answer came as steel screamed through the air. The fight was ugly. Brutal. Sirek was fast. He cut deep, searing lines across Slade's chest and back. But Slade didn't feel pain. He didn't even grunt. He was dead inside the moment Ella died. And dead men don't flinch. Slade caught Sirek mid-lunge, jammed the blade through his thigh, then his shoulder, then finally into his mouth, splitting it open. He lifted the warlord's body, drove it onto a spike beside Ella's. Then, for the first time in the war, he cried. Not for himself, not even for her, but for what he had become, and for the fact that there was no way back. Admiral Rayner watched the footage from a distance, the way Slade dropped to his knees, the way the flames danced behind him, war raging all around. He didn't issue a rescue order, didn't even try. Slade was lost now, and every man has a limit, even monsters. But even as he turned off the monitor, a message came through. From deep space, uncoded. 3 words, written in blood-red font across a black screen. We're not done. The galaxy should have gone quiet after Yalara. The death of Sirek Tharn. The public execution of Ella Darren. The burning of one of the last untouched outer worlds. It should have been the end. A breaking point, something to collapse under the weight of so much blood. But instead, it became the start of something worse. A new version of the war began to rise, not driven by flags or ranks or borders, driven by grief, hate, something ancient and savage buried deep inside human instinct. The Black Response Initiative no longer issued orders. It didn't need to. Because now Slade had become a symbol even they couldn't control. He vanished after Yalara, left the battlefield. No one knew where. Rumors spread like wildfire. Some said he'd died from his wounds, burned up inside his exosuit and buried beneath the rubble. Others said he went dark, deeper into the uncharted systems, chasing ghosts no one could see but him. But those who watched closely, they saw the signs. Ships disappearing, stations stripped bare, whispers in the dark of a man with iron eyes and a jagged scar who asked for names, and never asked twice. He wasn't working with the Black Response anymore. He was doing something far older. He was cleaning house. Rayner sat alone in the command deck of the Iron Rain, watching stars blur past. He should have been satisfied. The Ezerathi Empire was shattered, their nobles scattered, slave routes burned, biotrade crippled, border colonies lost. Rebellions were lighting up like wildfire, inspired by humanity's raw fury. But he wasn't satisfied. He was worried. Because Slade had gone past retribution, he'd gone feral. And feral men don't end wars. They feed them. Rayner played the intercepted transmission again, the one that had come just hours after Yalara burned. A distorted voice, grainy with static. Not quite Slade, not quite machine. They think this is vengeance. They don't understand. Vengeance is polite. This is the cleansing. He leaned back, jaw tight. What are you becoming, Slade? He whispered. In the fractured remains of Ezerathi territory, warlords were dying at an impossible rate. One by one, their safe houses were breached. No warning, no patterns, no ships tracked. Just sudden death. A mining lord on Varen, found impaled with Terran steel and left beneath his own drilling rig. A geneticist responsible for hybrid torture projects, discovered in her lab with her limbs surgically removed and her data burned to ash. A noble who auctioned Earth orphans to other species was crucified upside down and left spinning in the vacuum of space, recorded by an ancient Terran camera and broadcast across the entire sector. The footage bore no official stamp, just a single burned-in message. He watches. Azarathi officials started resigning. Even their allies, the Hydrosi, the Kantari, the Luxon Pact, began cutting ties, not out of sympathy, out of fear, because the galaxy finally understood something Earth had forgotten about itself. Humanity doesn't end wars the way others do. They drag you into the dirt with them, and if you don't drown first, they strangle you in it. Slade had built something. Not an army, not a fleet. Something deeper, something older. He'd created the Severance, a movement of men like him, broken, thrown away, forgotten by Earth's systems. Smugglers, mercenaries, ex-Marines, men who lost sons and daughters to Azarathi slave rings, men who didn't want medals or speeches, men who just wanted to kill. The Severance had no uniforms, no ships of their own. They hijacked everything, stripped vessels, unregistered cruisers, stolen tech. They operated in shadows, refused to follow the Geneva codes Earth still tried to enforce, and treated diplomacy like a joke. But they got results. And every time they left a message behind, it was the same phrase. Slade lives. Even when no one saw him, even when no one could trace him, the galaxy began to believe he wasn't a man anymore. He was an idea soaked in blood. Back on Earth, the politicians panicked. Black Response was disbanded on paper. Public statements were made condemning independent retaliation units. Amnesty was offered for Severance operatives. But no one turned themselves in. And Earth's outer colonies? They worshipped Slade. They painted murals of him, his armor blackened with soot, blade dripping, red eyes staring through the void. They wrote songs, built statues, forged entire underground networks bearing his insignia. He wasn't just alive in their eyes. He was the reason they felt safe again. Earth's inner politicians? They hated it. They wanted control. They wanted diplomacy. They wanted to rejoin the Galactic Council now that the Azarathi were scattered. But no one was listening to Earth's councils anymore. They were listening to Slade. And that scared the hell out of everyone. One day, a planet called Draken 6 went dark. Nothing strategic about it. Mid-tier colony. Mixed species population. Peaceful. Gone. When Earth's peace envoys arrived, they found nothing. No buildings, no trees, no people. Just glass. The entire planet had been flash-scorched. Written into the sand by orbital bombardment, visible only from above, was a massive symbol, carved with precision and fury. A skull, a bolt, a name beneath it. For Ella. The message was clear. Slade wasn't just targeting the guilty anymore. He was erasing anything that looked complicit, even those who stood silent. Raynor called a secret meeting. 6 surviving Black Response captains, all off book. He stood in the center of the cold steel room and looked every man in the eye. "You know why you're here?" he said. No one replied. They all knew. "Slade's gone too far." Silence again. Then Drix, one of the most seasoned operatives left, spoke up. "What do you want to do?" Raynor's jaw tensed. "I want to find him." "And do what?" Drix asked. "Talk him down? If I can. And if you can't?" Raynor didn't blink. "I'll stop him." The room stayed quiet, but something cold moved through it. Because no one knew if Raynor could stop him, and worse, no one knew if they even wanted to. In deep space, aboard a stolen stealth cruiser, Slade stood alone. He hadn't spoken in 3 days, not to anyone. The Severance crew gave him space. They followed him without question. Didn't need speeches, didn't need orders, just nods, glances, a bloodied handprint on a wall. That was enough. He walked into the ship's hull chamber, where a captured Ezerathi trader had been chained for interrogation. The alien looked up, trembling. I gave you the codes. I told you everything. Please. Slade said nothing. He raised the old Earthblade. The alien begged. Slade stopped. For a brief second his hand trembled. Then he saw her again, in his mind. Ella, tied to that post, mouth bleeding, eyes full of betrayal, and the blade came down again and again and again. Back on Earth, riots broke out again, not against Slade, against Earth's government. The people didn't want peace treaties. They didn't want interstellar trade. They didn't want to kneel at another galactic council pretending to care. They wanted truth, justice, and Slade was delivering it in fire and blood and bone. One banner rose above the chaos. You left us to burn. He made sure they did too. Somewhere, in the silence between systems, a message drifted into space. No encryption, no signature, just a voice. Human, tired, rough. It was Slade. They called me a weapon. They called me a threat. They're right. I'm what happens when you break a species for too long and expect it to kneel. I'm not the end of this war. I'm just the part they'll never forget. The stars swallowed the transmission, and the galaxy braced itself. Because Slade wasn't just still alive, he was evolving, and whatever came next wouldn't look human anymore. The stars never changed. That's what always bothered Raynor. No matter how many wars were fought, no matter how many empires crumbled, they stayed the same. Quiet, cold, distant, untouched. Raynor stared out the observation window of the Iron Rain, watching them blur by as the ship surged through deep space. He was heading into the Dark Belt now, a cursed stretch of uncharted territory where even smugglers didn't go. It wasn't mapped, it wasn't claimed. But someone was using it. Slade. Raynor had spent the last 4 months piecing it together. Every coded transmission, every whispered survivor report, every anomaly in ship movement near the outer edges. The Severance were ghosts, sure, but ghosts leave shadows. And Slade's shadow was everywhere. A warlord dead here. A fleet depot stripped to the bone there. A black market syndicate found flayed alive in zero gravity, eyes gouged out, with the phrase, "You sold her," burned into the walls. Raynor had trained killers. He'd led entire legions through blood and void. But he'd never seen anything like this. This wasn't war. This was surgical extinction. The Iron Rain dropped out of FTL in a void between systems. No planets, no moons, just dust and old wreckage. But Raynor's scanners picked up something else, a signal. Ancient Terran code, long retired. It pulsed once every 6 seconds. Not a distress call, not a threat. An invitation. Raynor stepped into the dropship bay with a skeleton crew. No tactical squad, no armor platoon. Just himself and a beacon tracker. He wasn't here to fight. He was here to talk, if talking was still possible. The ship came into view slowly, hovering in the dark like a rusted leviathan. It wasn't Severance made. It was pieced together from stolen hulls, decommissioned Earth frigates, stripped Ezerathi transports. It was more graveyard than cruiser. The name painted across the side made Raynor stop cold. Devastator 2, the same name as Thorn's ship, same font, same insignia, as if Slade was carrying Thorn's ghost with him through the void. The dropship latched to the airlock. Raynor stepped inside, weapon holstered, eyes sharp. The corridors were silent. No lights, no crew, just oxygen and the faint smell of oil and blood. He moved forward slowly until he reached a door marked with an old Terran military emblem. Inside, sitting at a steel table, was Slade. He looked like a corpse that refused to lie down. His hair had grown out. his beard thick and streaked with gray. His armor was scarred in ways that looked almost ceremonial. His left eye glowed faint red, replaced, no doubt, after the battle on Halion. He didn't rise, didn't speak, just watched. Raynor sat across from him. For 10 full seconds, neither moved. Finally, Raynor broke the silence. "You're making it impossible to clean up what's left." Slade blinked once, slow. "That's the idea. People are terrified of you now." "Good." Raynor's jaw tensed. "You burned a civilian world. Draken sex. They exported child slaves, quietly, through diplomatic loopholes. Ask your own intelligence archives." "That wasn't the point. There were innocent people there, too." Slade's eyes flicked to him. Hollow. Cold. "No such thing as innocent in a system that profits from silence." Raynor leaned forward, voice tight. "You were a soldier once. You fought for something. Now you're just killing to feed whatever's left of your rage." "I stopped being a soldier when I watched my sister scream on a live stream while aliens laughed." His voice cracked for half a second. Just enough. Raynor exhaled. Slowly. "I came to bring you home." Slade's eyes darkened. "There's no home for people like me." "You're still human, Slade." He shook his head once. "Number, I'm something the galaxy made. Something it deserved. And you can't put that back in the box?" He stood, slowly. His height still commanded presence. His hands, calloused and thick with old burns, rested at his side, but Raynor could see the tremor. The wear. The toll. "You think I wanted this?" Slade said. "I begged for orders. I begged for justice. I begged for you, Raynor, to do what needed to be done." Raynor didn't respond. Slade took a step closer. "You sent us out there with rules, with limits, and we watched our people get carved up by an empire that thought we were livestock." He paused. "You trained me to win wars. Don't look surprised that I turned into what it takes to do it." Silence again. The hum of the ship's dying engines groaned in the distance. Raynor looked down. "I didn't come to kill you." Slade stared at him. "I know. But I will, if I have to." A pause. Then a cold, distant smile crept across Slade's face. "No, you won't." He turned away and walked to the far wall, where a display flickered to life. It showed a star map. The remaining Ezerathi holdouts, smuggler routes, old Earth allies turned corporate scavengers, every node lit in red. "You want this to end?" Slade said. "Help me finish it, then put a bullet in my skull if it makes you sleep better." Raynor stood, his voice low. "There's nothing left to finish. You've broken them." Slade didn't look at him. "They're not the problem anymore." He tapped a point on the screen. "Earth. Your leaders have been feeding this fire for years, trading our pain for peace, sending our sons to die on borders while they shook hands and made deals." He turned, eyes burning. "I'm not after the Ezerathi anymore." Raynor's stomach dropped. "What are you saying?" Slade's voice dropped to a whisper. "I'm going home." Raynor's dropship left the Devastator II in silence. No goodbye. No threat. Just that cold, final sentence echoing in his head. "I'm going home." He returned to Earth orbit with one directive: warn the Council. But it was too late. Slade had already arrived. Not in a ship, not with a fleet, with an idea. The Severance had been spreading his message for months now, quietly, beneath the surface. Earth's outer colonies were already aligned with him. Earth's central systems were splintering. Politicians were turning on each other. Then came the blackout broadcast. It interrupted every feed, every channel. Slade's face, blood on his collar, eyes like frozen stone. "You've used our pain for profit. You've silenced every scream with paperwork. You didn't just let them slaughter us. You sold the knives they used." I am not your monster. I'm your mirror, and I'm coming to tear down the lie of peace you built over our corpses." The feed cut, and the world burned. Earth's capital erupted in riots. Protests turned to fires. Military installations saw mass defections. Entire battalions switched sides overnight. They didn't want to fight Slade. They wanted to follow him. In the midst of it all, Raynor stood alone in the war room, eyes locked on the planet below. He had one final choice: stand in the way of the storm he helped create, or walk into it and see if there was still something human behind the eyes of the beast. He strapped on his old armor, loaded his sidearm, and whispered, "Let's finish this." Night fell over Earth like a smothering blanket, but peace was nowhere in sight. From orbit, the planet still looked beautiful, blue and green, oceans shimmering beneath broken clouds. But up close, it was nothing but fire. The outer megacities were already lost. New Berlin, Tokyo Core, the American Tri-Dome, all flooded with protesters waving the skull and bolt, chanting Slade's name, tearing down Terran banners and torching government buildings. The System Authority Guard had collapsed in half those zones, officers throwing down their rifles and joining the crowds. On every block, digital signs played his face, his voice. "They sent us to die for peace," they sold at auction. "Now the collectors have come home." The Earth Council had fled. Cowards wrapped in silk, boarding private orbital cruisers under fake names while the people they'd governed begged for answers. There were no answers, only judgment. Slade didn't land in a warship. He walked in, from the coast. A single figure, clad in black, crossing the bridge into Old Geneva, where Earth's central government had once stood proud. The streets were empty, buildings gutted, flags burned. Only smoke remained, thick and bitter, carrying with it the memories of betrayal. He moved like death in motion. No entourage, no armor platoon, just the same cracked exosuit, blood-stained blade, and his name on the lips of millions. A group of militia spotted him near the eastern checkpoint. They froze, eyes wide. You're him," one whispered. Slade didn't speak. He didn't need to. They stepped aside. No one pointed a gun, because no one wanted to be the one remembered for pulling that trigger. Not yet. Inside the ruins of the Central Judiciary Complex, where Earth's justice system had once processed thousands of war crimes, Slade stood among the broken statues. He looked up at the carving above the court's shattered entrance. "In reason we trust." He spat. How many Terran politicians had walked through these halls and signed orders that left colonies unprotected? How many bureaucrats had watched the Ezerathi slaughter border towns and turned it into numbers on a report? He didn't burn the building, he let it stand, as a memorial to cowardice. Then he moved deeper into the city, toward the only man left who might meet him face to face. Raynor stood alone at the base of Unity Spire. The building had once held the Earth Council chamber. Now it was half destroyed. Chunks of marble scattered across the steps. Windows blasted out. The golden dome cracked down the center like a broken crown. He could hear the rumble outside. Marchers, militia, shouts echoing from blocks away. The people weren't coming to celebrate. They were coming to witness. Slade was already on the approach. Raynor checked his weapon one last time. Full charge. Clean chamber. He knew what this was. There wasn't going to be a speech. There wasn't going to be forgiveness. Just the reckoning. And part of him accepted that. Because if Slade didn't kill him, then Raynor might have to do the one thing no one else on Earth could. Pull the trigger. They met at the foot of the broken spire. Two shadows in a city of smoke and ruin. Slade stepped into the light, eyes unreadable, the glow from his enhanced optic flickering against the haze. He carried the blade low. Casual, like it was part of him now. Raynor said nothing for a long time. Then finally, "You said you were coming home." Slade tilted his head. "I did." "This isn't home anymore," Raynor said. Slade looked around. "Because you let them turn it into something else." Raynor raised his weapon. Slade didn't flinch. "You've made your point," Raynor said. "The galaxy's listening. The Ezerathi are broken. The cowards are gone. You've won." "I haven't won anything," Slade said coldly. "Not until every hand that signed those orders is in the dirt." "They're gone," Raynor snapped. "Dead or fled. They'll come back." Slade stepped closer. "And when they do, they'll rebuild the same broken system, unless someone puts fear back in their hearts." "This isn't fear," Raynor growled. "This is madness." Slade's voice dropped. "No, Admiral, this is clarity. I let hope guide me, peace, diplomacy. I watched my sister scream because I believed there were rules. You taught me the rules." He raised the blade. "Now I'm unlearning them." Raynor fired. Slade dodged. The beam cracked the wall behind him, sending sparks through the air. In a second, Slade was on him, blade slicing low, catching Raynor's leg. The Admiral stumbled back, pain flaring. He didn't hesitate. He fired again. Slade twisted, the bolt grazing his shoulder, burning through the outer plating. He charged, tackled Raynor into the wall, blade raised. But Raynor wasn't untrained. He headbutted him. Slade staggered. The two men crashed to the ground, rolling in the rubble of the fallen government. Fists, blades, blood. No fancy moves, no technique. Just raw hate and broken trust. Slade slammed Raynor's face into the concrete. "You trained me to survive." Raynor kicked him off. "I trained you to fight with honor." Slade stood, blood dripping down his face. "There's no honor in begging for mercy while your lungs are melting in a slave camp." Raynor raised the gun again. His hands shook. Slade stepped forward. "Do it." Raynor's finger hovered over the trigger. "End it." And he couldn't. His hands dropped. Because no matter how far Slade had fallen, no matter how much blood he'd spilled, there was still a piece of that boy from training camp. Young, fearless, unbreakable, standing there in front of him. And Raynor had already lost too many sons to this war. "I can't save you," he said quietly. Slade stared at him. "I'm not asking to be saved." The roar outside grew louder. People were coming. Marchers, militia, survivors. Everyone who had waited, starved, fought, and bled while Earth ignored them. They were coming to see the man who never turned his back. Slade looked down at Raynor. "You'll tell them I didn't come for power." Raynor nodded slowly. "I'll tell them you came for justice." Slade turned and walked away. Back into the broken streets, back into the fire. Later that night, the broadcasts changed. Slade appeared again, face bruised, cut, still dripping with blood from the fight. But his voice was calm. "I will not rebuild your system. I will not take your throne. I will not become what you feared. I will become what you deserved. From this day forward, Earth belongs to its people, not to diplomats, not to parasites, not to cowards behind marble desks. Let the galaxy look upon us. And remember, you sent an armada for one ship. Now we send you fire." The screen cut to black, and below it a single phrase. "We are Severance." Raynor never saw Slade again. Some said he vanished into the outer rim, hunting the last of the hidden collaborators. Some believed he died, but others whispered something else. That he became the judge, that Severance still operates in his name, finding the weak spots in corrupt governments, punishing those who abuse power, leaving behind red skulls on ash and ruin. And that Slade still walks among the stars, watching, waiting, reminding the galaxy. You don't bury men like him. You unleash them. 6 months after the fall of Earth's central government, silence reigned. The orbital highways were empty. The bureaucratic grid that once linked Earth to its colonies had gone dark. The trade syndicate was gone. The Ezerathi Council was a memory. Half the galaxy's balance of power had collapsed under the weight of one man's warpath. Slade didn't become king. He didn't raise a flag. He didn't sit on a throne, give orders, or write new laws. He just vanished. But his name didn't. It spread through every colony like wildfire. Kids who had never seen war painted his skull and bolt over their walls. Outer world miners carved his face into canyon walls beside Terran eagles. On the broken husks of Ezerathi warships, the Severance left a single phrase on their exit beacons: "Still watching." Earth tried to rebuild, but nothing went back to normal, because normal had been the problem all along. Admiral Rayner sat in what remained of Unity Spire. Now it was just a hollow shell, repurposed into a civilian hall. No government logos, no guards, just a wide circular table where colony leaders, worker unions, and militia commanders met face to face. No elite, no senators, no backroom deals. It wasn't a system. Not yet. But it was something better. Rayner had refused all rank. They offered him medals, titles, leadership positions. He turned them all down. "I'm here to help fix what I stood by and watched burn," he said. He spent his days patching trade lines, negotiating ceasefires, rebuilding trust one planet at a time. But each night, he climbed to the roof of the ruined spire and stared at the sky, and wondered if somewhere out there. Slade was watching, too. No one ever proved where he went. But the stories persisted. A cargo ship captain claimed to have picked up a solitary man floating in a disabled severance pod on the edge of the Kuros abyss. Said the man had a scarred face, one red eye, and didn't speak. Another account from a colony on Varn told of a stranger who dismantled a raider gang in a single night. 12 bodies hanging from trees, each one marked with a Terran symbol in ash. But the most famous story came from a child, a refugee girl from Draken 6. She'd been taken from her family before the bombardment, sold to a rogue Hydrasi merchant. 2 years later, she was found on a backwater moon with no memory of how she escaped. Just a name burned into the collar of her coat. Slade. When asked who rescued her, she always said the same thing. He didn't talk. He just looked at me and nodded like I mattered. Severance changed after that. They stopped killing. Not completely, but the chaos was gone. They began targeting infrastructure, dirty supply chains, smuggling operations. Instead of executions, they broadcast confessions, video footage of senators arranging under-the-table deals with alien slavers, audio of Earth diplomats laughing while frontier colonies burned. They didn't fight for territory. They exposed the filth. Let the people decide. Some governments crumbled overnight. Others begged for clemency. But Severance never asked for power. They just cleaned the rot, one system at a time. Rayner never found him. But he did find Thorne's old ship logs, retrieved from a decrypted data core unearthed during the reconstruction of the Devastator Memorial. The final entries broke him. Thorne hadn't just known the strike was suicide. He had planned for it, deliberately delayed escape protocols, purged AI override systems. He wanted the Ezerathi to kill him, not to martyr himself, but to trigger someone else. Rayner read the last line over and over again. "If I die screaming, maybe someone will hear me. And if they do, God help whoever made me scream." Slade had heard it, and the galaxy would never forget it. 1 year after the uprising, Earth held its first global remembrance ceremony. Not a parade, not a holiday. A silence. 1 minute across every colony, station, and orbital ring. 1 minute where every light dimmed, every broadcast paused, and one image was shown across every screen. Slade, blood on his collar, eyes hollow, the fire of 1,000 voices echoing behind him, not a hero, not a villain, just a mirror, and beneath his image, a single line. Never again. Not to ours. In the outer reaches of space, past known trade lines and military patrols, there is a graveyard of ships, broken vessels, dead tech, forgotten conflicts. Locals call it the silent grave. They say on some nights when the radiation storms clear, a figure can be seen walking between the hulls, slowly, silently, searching. Some say he's dead, others think he's a ghost, a machine, a memory, but a handful, those who knew the war, know better. They say he never died, because men like him don't die. They burn into history like scars that never heal. Raynor grew old in peace, or what passed for peace. He taught at an academy on Mars, not tactics, not war, history. He made his students read the raw reports, unedited footage, testimonies from survivors, soldiers, even traitors. "Don't ask who was right," he told them. "Ask what we allowed." One day, a student asked about Slade. Was he a hero? Raynor paused, stared out the window at the cold Martian sky. "No," he said. "Heroes are for bedtime stories." Was he a villain? Another pause. Number villains want power. Then what was he? Raynor looked down and smiled just a little. He was us, with nothing left to lose. And in the silence of deep space, aboard an old, rusted cruiser with no markings, a figure watched stars pass by. No uniform, no rank, just scars. Just breathe. Just one hand resting on a blade that had outlived its war, and a single voice in the darkness, whispering from a speaker that hadn't worked in years. "Transmission received, Captain Thorne. Retaliation complete. Standing by." The man didn't respond. He just closed his eye and let the silence have him. Not in surrender, but in completion.